where investors are investing, but they're going to invest in whoever they think is going to make the best return for them at this time. And you need to be able to tell a good enough story of why now. I call that the silver bullet slide.
Donna Griffit, thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much, Michael. I just read when somebody asks you like these days, how are you? You're supposed to say, well, I'm 2020 great, which means in spite of everything, life is pretty good. Cannot complain.
Well,
Counting my blessings.
we're going to talk soon about how actually during COVID you accelerated your business to over 150% growth. But we're going to leave that to the later half of the conversation, because I'd like to start off with your journey, Donna. You're a worldwide known storyteller. You've helped thousands of entrepreneurs, founders, CEOs, executives work through their stories, and the way that you're saying it is to turn raw data into something meaningful and magical that others buy into and engage with. It's never been more relevant than today, and I think that as I'm watching the world unfold, especially in terms of politics and entrepreneurship, it's all about storytelling and it's all about framing. But let's go from the beginning. Donna, who are you?
Oh, wow. Who am I? That's a trick question. You could go anywhere with that. So I'm a storyteller through and through. It's funny that sometimes your professions find you. So I've been the polisher of diamonds, as somebody called me, for the past
I love that.
16 years.
Polisher of
And
diamonds.
it's true. I mean, just to give you an example, yesterday I had 3 2-hour meetings where I wrote 3 investor decks. One was for a company doing data for blockchain exchanges. Another one was a medical device for repairing the heart valve. And the third one was a marketplace for artists to come home and do their art, their cooking, their whatever. So, I mean, that's what my weeks look like. I get to work with the best, the brightest, the most amazing companies. And what they all have in common, other than the fact that they're brilliant, is they all struggle to tell their story. And sometimes people hear storytelling, they're like, what's that? And what it really is it's messages that compel. When you're listening to a story, you should be so engaged and enthralled that you don't even feel a sense of time. You're not distracted by other things. You're synced completely to the speaker. And when our wavelengths are synced up, and there's actually studies that show that storyteller and story listener are synced up, the influence is much bigger. So stories can really catapult our business.
Why is it so hard? It's telling a story. You start off with the beginning, then you have a middle and an end. You put a conflict in the middle, and then you finish with a Hollywood happy ending.
Puff, puff, so easy. So, what I think it is, it's the I call it the baby syndrome. When you have a baby, and people are like, "So how's the baby?" You pull out your phone and you start showing like hundreds and hundreds of pictures, and you're oblivious to the fact that people are kind of glazed over. And you can achieve the same kind of fun effect by showing 2 or 3 and be done
Right.
with it. So the same thing with founders. I feel that there's a lot of overtelling, overselling, not being clear, and they overwhelm their users. So I sometimes you can call it like a first date. If on your first date, you start talking about your entire dating history, where you want to get married, how many kids you want to have, there's a good chance you're not going to see that person again.
Right.
So the same thing with an investor or a sales meeting. You want to give them just what they need to know to intrigue them and want them to go on another date with you.
Wow.
So it's the founders, executives, everyone gets lost in the weeds.
And obviously,
It's so
when you're meeting these different founders and executives, you're meeting them across all different stages of their life cycle, right? From very early stage to very late stage. And I'm sure that the messaging is also different in how they convey. Some of them is more data driven. Some of that is more, dreamlike. And let's go on a journey of what the future could hold for the world, right?
And you have to do that. That I think is the key thing that a lot of people miss. that investors really look for is that North Star, that vision. Ask yourself, when you 5 years from now, what will your company be for your industry or beyond your industry?
Right.
What are you changing? What's the seismic shift that's happening thanks to you? And that's what you want to look towards. What you're doing now may just be the first step in that, and that's fine. You got to start somewhere,
Sure.
but you need to be able to paint the picture of the much bigger journey.
100%. So, Donna, you start off your life orthodox. At 16, you know what you're going to be doing with your life. Walk me back to your childhood. I have to understand, how does one become an expert storyteller to the point where they're working with thousands of entrepreneurs and executives?
So, yeah, my parents became Orthodox. We moved to Israel when I was 11, and we became Orthodox a few years before that. And I spent many years back and forth between Israel and the U.S. I've always been a hybrid, which at first, as a kid, is very hard to take, because when I moved to Israel, I was like, oh, she's so American, and so and you try to grow the skin to be more robust. And then I
Yep.
moved back to get my master's at NYU in drama therapy, which is what I discovered at 16. I'm like, it's like they put together the perfect thing for me. I knew that there was a master's in NYU. I knew that's what I wanted to do. And everything I did up until then was geared towards getting into that program.
Drama
And then at
therapy?
22, drama therapy, that's what my master's is
What's
in.
drama
I know
therapy?
it's a combination of psychology and theatric arts. My thesis was written about the internship that I did at Bellevue Hospital with homeless, mentally ill adult men. That it was an inpatient program, that they were out of the hospital ward and moving into it. So I did 6 months there just as 9/11 happened. So I experienced what it was to be homeless, because we were evacuated on 9/11. I lived down in the financial district. So it's one of those really, pivotal times in the world. And here we are at another one. So stories become so powerful. And my thesis was a lot about the stories of how these men were processing and dealing. So, how did I get to corporate storytelling? Out of that, I realized that I had always loved acting, and I knew something in me. I couldn't be an actress if I wanted to be able to put food on the table, so I needed to find something that combined it. That was why drama therapy, and then I discovered the drama therapy salary was about that of a struggling artist. So I started thinking, what else? What else? I enrolled in a postmaster's program for training and organizational development after I had one of these aha moments that somebody said they had a friend that traveled the globe giving workshops. And I was like, that's what I want to do with my life. So I found that, sent my resume to the first place on Craigslist, of all places, that was looking for corporate
Craigslist.
trainers.
Wow.
Yep. And I was with Boyer Communications Group, a wonderful boutique firm in New York, for over 12 years. Brett
Wow.
Boyer taught me everything I know. He was like a father and a mentor. And I learned on the job. I traveled all around giving these workshops, and then transferred my skill set to startup stories.
Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. So, going back to startup stories, walk me through what a meeting with you would be like. So, if I'm coming in and I'm saying, Donna, I have this big thing that I have to do. I have to raise capital. I have to go give a keynote about my product. I have a sales pitch to this crazy company. What does our engagement look like? What does it mean to work with a storyteller?
So what happens is I send you a cheat sheet for whatever, if it's a sales deck, an investor deck, a 5-minute pitch for a demo day, and you organize your data. It's almost like I'm giving you a shopping list and saying, please go to like Whole Foods or some high
Yeah.
quality store, bring me premium ingredients, and I will cook you the meal in the session. So everything happens in real time. We have a 2-hour session. We dive right in, and I have a filter in my brain that's backed by AI and ML and deep learning and NLP. I have no idea what's in there, but something happens and out comes the story, and I start writing. And it's very collaborative, because then the founder sees what I'm writing, and I stop and they say, okay, that part's great. That part we need to tweak a bit. And then we iterate on the spot, creating the optimal story that they feel 150% confident about. It's important to me that I'm like taking their voice and elevating it. People don't tend to write about themselves in superlatives and in braggadocious kind of ways, which it's not a bad thing. You need to be able to show that confidence. Let your numbers speak for yourself. And so it's getting into the right flow. It's almost like putting a puzzle together. You have to move pieces around. And like yesterday, I finished one of the sessions and then I was drinking coffee and I'm like, lightning moment. I know how to make it even better. And I went back and split one of the slides, moved something around, and it like cracked it all open. So it's really fun, intense. I mean,
Yeah.
major intense. But we get things done, and usually they leave after 2 hours with a fully
2 hours.
scripted.
So
Yeah.
people work for weeks on slide decks and presentations, iterating, getting feedback from so many different people. These are sometimes these are the make or break moments for the company, right? If I'm taking my slide deck and I have an opportunity to pitch in front of a top tier VC, this is pretty much my moment of glory, right? Not just for the startup, but also as me as a founder. This is a chance to position ourselves. How do you get this done in 2 hours? Because you're not necessarily an expert in their field. You don't necessarily know
No,
these
I'm
people
not. I'm for
personally.
sure not. I don't come from a technical background. I don't come from a business, a finance background. I told you what my master's is in. But I am able at the same time to have a conversation between them and whoever they're pitching to, whether it's an investor, a potential customer. Think of all of the questions the other side would have, all of the objections. And our goal is to bring those up and to melt them as we tell the story, as we go through the message, so that they're not sitting there thinking, they're sitting there thinking, So we really want to engage them and answer their questions, which really is what storytelling is all about. It's about engaging the other side and what's important to them. So,
That makes
yeah,
sense.
I don't know what it is. That's just my superpower to be able to chameleon myself in. And I always say to them, if I can tell your story, anybody can. I'm the benchmark of every man or every woman that I'm going to be the lowest common denominator you'd be speaking to. And if I get it, they'll get it, especially if they're from your field or they have a deep understanding of your field.
And what is the feedback loop? So you send them off, they take the slide deck. Do they come back, update?
Well, they have a design. Sometimes they'll come back, they'll send it to me for review. And then sometimes they'll come back, like if they did the investor deck, they'll raise and then we'll do the sales deck or their website. What's great is once we've cracked the DNA of their story in one deliverable, they're able to then translate it and weave it
Right,
into
right,
others.
right.
It's like their basis. I call it the infrastructural messaging. It's the
Sure.
things that's going to take them forward 5, 10 years. It's the basis of their language, which will evolve and change. I mean, I worked with JFrog when they were just a tadpole, and
Wow.
now they're about to go public. And they hired me after I coached them into 2-minute pitch session, and nobody could understand what the heck they were doing. And they came to me afterwards and they're like, yeah, I think we need your help. So we worked on their sales deck and their pitch deck, and then they raised their first 4 mil after that. And
Wow.
it's so exciting to see, because they were true visionaries. They were way ahead of the curve. And nobody was getting it yet. It's kind of like a lot of the blockchain applications are now, and looking at data in blockchain. Back then, it was all big data and continuous.
Sure.
Nobody got it.
100%.
So it's
So
being able to help them see into the future and understand that this is going to be a big thing. That's a huge piece,
of
like we were
course.
talking about with the vision.
Of course, but so you've got to see over the past years the industry of storytelling, and this is a very unique perspective, I think, because as an entrepreneur or as an executive, you really get to see one story unfold over and over in front of different people over a life cycle. You get to see thousands of different stories unfold at different stages across years. What has the industry changed at all? Are the expectations different about storytelling from, let's say, 10 years ago?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, 10 years ago or 11 years ago is when I pivoted to working with startups, and we were at like a high trajectory of a crisis, of a recession, where how you told your story mattered more.
Right.
Here we are once again at that kind of trajectory where investors are investing, but they're going to invest in whoever they think is going to make the best return for them at this time. And you need to be able to tell a good enough story of why now. I call that the silver bullet slide. It has to be about why, the urgency. Get them to see that this is something now. So about I have a workshop that I give on finding the villain, the bad guy in your audience's life, whether it's economic turndown or security vulnerabilities or waste in the system. That was a list I made in about 2009, 2010. I've now updated it to look at the pain points that have arisen all of a sudden overnight.
Yep.
We were thrust into a completely new reality with completely new needs. I mean, the fact that in the US you couldn't get masks and toilet paper and things at the beginning is mind-boggling. So something has to be done with supply chain.
100%.
Kids are learning from home and they're learning through a medium like this, which is great, but it's not very engaging. I have a 7-year-old. She's sitting in front of Zoom all day. The teachers are doing the best they can to engage them, but so that's another part that I'm going to see. I see a lot of disruption. So smart investors and smart entrepreneurs know how to look at where things are going and pivot. And I've seen some amazing companies pivot right away when this whole thing started and do extremely well. Like, see what's happening and then, okay, here's what we're going to do. Move fast.
So COVID hits. You mentioned that you look back in 2008, a recession that you went through, and now you've managed to make some changes in order to accelerate your business in time when you don't even get to meet face to face with those that you're helping tell their story. And to me, it sounds so. There's so much humanity and so much personality in storytelling. And I'm sure that when you're sitting in a room with somebody, this energy and this chemistry, it's part of the process, right, of understanding each other. And yet you managed to even accelerate your business. Tell me about that.
Well, lucky for me, I've been doing Zoom meetings like this for many years. I was already a happy paying Zoom customer before COVID hit, so I'm happy to have contributed to their big 167% growth over the past few months, but I was already there before. No, I'm not a stakeholder. But what happened March 14th, I could, it's starting to feel like the bleep is hitting the fan. Notes, emails from my girls' schools were closing. We were living in an apartment complex. They closed all shared spaces. Clients canceling meetings, saying they couldn't pay for work that was already done, like all at once. And I was totally thrust back to 2008 when that was happening at the same time. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Of course, the first emotion naturally is fear, and you can't breathe. And then I was like, okay, where's my 2008 playbook? I grabbed it from the attic, dusted it off, and I was like, okay, what can I learn from there? That was the point where I pivoted to working with startups because enterprise was crumbling and startups had a need. And of course, all the lovely voices of people saying, startups? Nobody's going to pay you for that. Thanks. So, I mean, I was actually one of those serendipitous moments where I was introduced to a cardiothoracic surgeon who needed help with his professional speeches, but also had 2 medical devices that he needed pitches for. And that was my first foray into the world. And I actually went and presented on his behalf for a big angel conference, saw the other startups that were invited pitch, and my heart just broke. And I'm like, someone needs to help them. That was my moment of elucidation. And I was actually the first person in Israel to coin the phrase storytelling for business or for startups. And not in the world, and then so I was like, okay, what do people need now? What do they need in the here and now? And I thought, okay, we're all going to be working from home. People need remote presentation training because people don't know how to present. They are awful. So I took out a presentation, a workshop that I gave back in 2003 before we even had video conferences, reworked it, added a layer of Zoom, and started marketing it.
Wow.
The other thing I did was I'm like, startups are going to be freaking out now. So I took one of my workshops and broadened it and called it Fundraising for Uncertain Times.
Amazing.
So those 2 things, pushing it out, creating visibility, creating partnerships, trying everything. And in Hebrew, we have the expression, throw your bread out on the water.
Yep.
Because you never know who's going to nibble.
Right.
And that's just
people
what
nibble.
Happened.
Amazing.
Nibble.
Donna, I have to say, I mean, it's amazing to me how people work so hard on such amazing technologies for so long, and sometimes it boils down to a few minutes. It boils down to a 2 minute pitch or a 5 minute pitch or even an hour pitch, and you're trying to sum up a work of years in a 10 minute presentation, and at the end, it's almost, I think, an analogy to people go to the gym 3 times a week, 4 times a week to work on their body so much. People don't really put too much effort most of the time on their minds and training their minds, whether it be better sleep quality, better food, psychology, whatever. And I think that it's similar thing here. And I think that the work that you're doing is just so incredible. And I can't wait to work with you as well when I have my own startup and my own projects. But before we leave, then I want to
Well,
thank you
I've
for
no
being.
doubt.
I want to thank you for being so generous with your time. I need 3 words that you would use to describe yourself.
Okay, so optimist. My motto for life is Winston Churchill. Of course, I'm an optimist. I don't see much point in being anything else.
Yeah.
How do you say get thing doner?
Getting shit done.
Getting shit done. That's the closest word I can find. I am on it.
I love it.
No moss grows under my feet. If I don't do it on the spot, I feel like I'll never get it done.
Yep.
And I'm a really good friend. I'm a really good friend and a really good spouse and daughter. I mean, I'm very devoted to the people that I care about in my life.
Donna, toda rabba, thank you very, very much. This is just wonderful.
You have a great holiday weekend. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Mike.